Welcome back to Nightly Nonsense, where we attempt to make some sense out of the nonsense that is going all around. Brought back in Bob Benson, who is pastor extraordinaire, but that's not why I'm bringing you in, just for the record.
Okay.
We are facing the aftermath and still going on of a hurricane in Florida, right? And was thinking about all the different aspects of it and thinking about how 1 minute your house is standing, the next minute it's not, and all the things that go along with that. But you have unique experience because you are and have been for a very long time a first responder, right? And so walk me through a little bit, Bob. If you were down there right now this morning, waking up, right, and you were a first responder, what are some of the things that you would be facing right now down there?
Well, I think the first thing we have to think about as a first responder, you wouldn't be waking up this morning. Mm-hmm. You would have been up all night. The emergencies intensify during a huge incident like this. Mm-hmm. It's not like you get a lot of rest during these times. Mm-hmm. And we've seen that in huge incidences here in our state. So to get a break from it is very, very difficult. And even when you do get a break, you don't sleep very well. You're on edge because you know you're going right back into the fray the next day. So I would say that the biggest thing you're facing in times like this is fatigue.
Okay.
Fatigue plays a big part of it. Mm-hmm. And you know that it's not going to end today. Mm-hmm. You know, at the end of your shift, you may clock out. Mm-hmm. But it's not the end of what you've got to do. And especially, we're talking, this is affecting 4 million people in the state of Florida.
So I would imagine with that, also when you clock out, I like how you said that, you're also not just leaving all of that there, you're taking it with you.
You do, and you carry a bunch of that stuff for long periods of time. My role in the county today is I'm part of the critical incident stress management team. We have some techniques that we use to manage those long-term stressors that everybody carries and helping people walk through the trauma, because there is trauma involved in the first responders as well as the people, okay? And walking through that. It takes some mental health. And I'm there as a pastoral presence to remind people that their faith plays into it.
Yep.
And that's really tough, especially in the secular world that we live in today, is to try and highlight the point of faith. Hey, there's a God that loves you. No matter how helpless or hopeless the situation is,
right,
we have hope. And we can have that hope.
So you're sitting in your, your fire station, whatever, mm-hmm. right, wherever you are, and a call comes in, right? Normally, it would be an immediate reaction, right? The whistle goes off, you hop in your trucks, and you're on your way to wherever you're going. But under these circumstances, that's probably not exactly how it works, right?
In a situation like this, what happens is you stack up and they prioritize those calls.
Okay.
The calls where life and safety are paramount. They go to the top of the list, and things where people are inconvenienced. Mm-hmm. You still have, during this, you're going to have these flooded basement calls. Mm-hmm. And a flooded basement call takes less priority than somebody that's being swept away in the water. So prioritizing that, and sometimes the priorities aren't set completely the way they should be, and you have to deal with that. You have to be very flexible on your feet and deal with that as you roll along.
Okay, so we have this priority. Call comes in, right? Human life is at risk, so we're used to getting in our vehicles and just being able to get to where we need to get to. But now in a hurricane situation like this, we're not guaranteed that we're going to be able to get to there the way that we want to get to there.
Yeah. As soon as the alarm goes off, there's this, and I want to clarify, there's a stress that happens. And stress, we all function under a level of stress, okay? It's whether we let it turn into distress. There's a positive part of stress that makes us perform in those emergency situations. You're preparing your mind as you're going to the call. You're trying to think of, what equipment do I need? How do I need to react here? That's stress. Okay. When we let it turn into distress and that's all we can think about is when it becomes a real issue. So there's a positive side of stress and a negative side. The distress is what we don't want to get into.
So when you're fatigued, you're tired out, probably harder to keep that in check.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. It's absolutely easy to tip into the distress part of it. And knowing that and recognizing that in yourself and saying, hold it, whoa, I need to step back. And is it okay for a first responder to say, I need to step back?
So how do you deal as a first responder? And again, I would imagine that this happens infrequently, but in moments like this with the hurricane going on and all the things down, there may be a possibility with down wires and broken up bridges and roads again. How do you deal with the fact that if you're attempting to get there to help somebody and you can't get there?
That adds a level of stress, and it's very easy to let that turn to distress. If I'm there, I can help. If I can't get there, all of a sudden we stress about that, and we very often let that turn into distress. We can only do what we can do, and that's the attitude, especially for volunteers. You know, I was a professional, but every time I left the ambulance service and I went home, I was a volunteer. You know, it's not a turn off, turn on thing for most of these guys that are in first response.
Now, what happens if you're trying to get to a place, right? You're trying to get the call, you can't get there, and you realize that there's a whole list of other calls. Right? When do you look at a situation and say, I can't get there, I can't help here, but there's hundreds of other people that I can help?
You know, that's the great thing about working with other people that are in the same situation, because we can say, I could call the dispatch center. Look, there's no physical way I can get there. Give me the next one. And is it okay to do that? Yeah, it has to be. Especially if you have another priority call coming in. And sometimes we'd have priority calls stacked on top of each other.
I can imagine right now in Florida.
Yeah, in Florida, sure. And how do you do that? You keep pressing forward, doing the best that you can. You know?
So now, last question before we kind of tie this up, right? When you get to a place and you see worst case scenario or disaster or, you know, just frustrating, it's putting you guys in harm's way. How do you stop from, in that moment, looking at these people and getting angry, like that you put us in this danger, right? Your unwillingness to leave, your unwillingness to do what was right, your unwillingness to go, you're putting us in danger.
You know, I think about that quite often. You deal with what you get. And getting angry at these people because they didn't do what they should have behind this doesn't help the situation.
Right.
You deal with what immediately is happening in front. I say it this way. We need churches full of paramedics, okay? There are three kinds of people that respond to a call. You have the bystanders that want to stand and look around and see what happened. Then you have law enforcement, and I'm not degrading law enforcement. They're great people, self-sacrificial. They really do a great job. But then you have the police respond to a situation, especially I'm thinking of a car accident. And they get there and they want to assign blame. And then you have the paramedics. I don't care who was at fault. I want to get there and take care of people. And that's what we need in the church. People that just want to take care. I don't want to gawk. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to spread rumors.
I want to assign blame.
I don't want to assign blame. I want to get there and take care of people. And that's the kind of people that we're looking for to engage in Christ's work. He didn't assign blame.
Nope.
He didn't discuss it with half a dozen different people and say, did you see that or did you see? You know, from my point of view, does it matter?
Right.
Do we just want to care for people? And
well, I love that. As we wrap this up, everything that you just said, right, has application in the church. Because again, we have hurricanes that go through churches.
We have hurricanes that run through the Christian community.
That's right. And so again, we start off with this concept of, okay, how do we prioritize, right? How do we prioritize the flooded basement and the person whose life is in danger? And we do that frequently day to day just as pastors, right? What call do I go to first? Where do I go? How do I do it? Who do I check in on first? All of these things.
And in EMS, we call that triage. Do we do Christian triage? What things take priority today? I quite often say, I have a list that I want to accomplish today.
Yeah.
And my prayer in the morning is, don't let me accomplish the list, but let me be about what you want me to be about today.
Yeah.
If I get to item number 3 and God puts something there that he wants me to accomplish, can I set the list aside and do that? And I think that's really difficult for some people. Well, if you're a list person, don't listen to me today, because you won't put the list aside.
Well, and that's where, again, the heartstrings also play such a role in this, right? That if it's my grandmother who has the flooded basement, it becomes a high priority for me, right? And again, we look at things, and I think of the times that I have spent in a waiting room of a hospital, right? And I'm sitting there for hour after hour after hour waiting to hear news on one person in a hospital filled with sick people.
Yeah.
Right? Is there a way that you can honor, be there, and still take care of other people at the same time? Right?
I think that's a matter of prioritizing for us. What is God's priority for us today?
Yep.
What has he set in front of you that he wants you to accomplish? And being in tune with the Spirit and in tune with your relationship with Jesus helps you discern those things.
Yep.
And it gets difficult at times. I want to make this really personal and really true. One of the first calls that I ran as a paramedic, and I was a volunteer firefighter, and volunteer firefighters face some challenges because they're always working on their friends, their neighbors, and their families.
Yeah.
One of the first calls I ran was my wife's grandfather had gone into cardiac arrest. And I was brand new out of paramedic school. There was another guy that was with me who'd gone through the school and didn't pass the exam. He would go back and pass the exam later. And he said, "What do you want to do?" And I'm standing there, and it's my wife's grandpa.
Yeah. Yep.
And I said, "I'm too close to the situation to make that call. But if you make the call, we'll do whatever you say." And he said, let's do everything we can. And I pitched in, and I did what I could.
Yep.
And we leave those results. Sometimes you have to realize, I am too close to the situation to make this call.
Yep.
And can you call on somebody else? And that's really helpful. I don't have to make every call.
And that's why we have a team, right?
We do have a team.
I love that. The last two questions that I asked you, there are times when we're doing everything we can and we cannot get to people. We can't reach them, right? And we're banging our head against the wall. And yet there's all these other calls. There's all these other people, right? But we're focused on, I got to get this. And sometimes we have to make the call, I can't reach you right now, right?
That's the ministry.
Yep. Yeah, it's exactly right.
Yeah.
But I also think what you said, and you answered it, and that there are a lot of times when we show up on a scene and we're like, if you had told me this earlier, if you had just reached out earlier, if you'd done this, if you'd done this, if you'd done that. I said frequently, and our people said, like, man, if you would have told us, we could have helped you, right? Well, okay, but here's where we are. I didn't.
Right.
I didn't reach
Let's
out.
work from this point.
Right. So you can keep telling me that if I had, we'd be in a different place.
Right. Does it do any good in the midst of this hurricane to tell the 2.5 million people that were told that they should evacuate that they did this to themselves? It's not going to do any good.
Yeah.
You care for them where they are and when they're there.
Yeah, and it doesn't, I was thinking about earlier today, funerals and memorial services, it really doesn't matter how the person died. The tears and the pain and the grief and all that stuff, they're the same. Like, again, we can have more peace about things and all that kind of stuff, but the fact that somebody dies, it really doesn't matter how they died.
Well, and I always come back to the whole thing is we all die.
Yep.
Every one of us. I mean, you look in the history of the world, and population theorists, they theorize that there are as many people on the planet today as have ever been in the planet's existence. So out of 16 billion people,
Yep.
we only know of 2 that have gotten off this planet without dying.
Yeah.
Your chances aren't real good.
Yeah.
Now, I know as a Christian, we look forward to Christ's return and Him taking us off this planet. I mean, that's what we all hope for.
Uh-huh.
But the reality is, there's very few of us
Yeah.
that on this planet will be yanked off of here when Christ returns.
That's a good
You
point.
know, it's narrow
Yeah.
and it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you go to a memorial service and you're talking to people about their mortality, it becomes very real.
Yeah.
Very real.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be a volunteer fireman or in the EMS or to
Ministry.
realize, you're in ministry.
Yep.
You're in ministry.
Love it. Well, let's leave it right there for this episode of Nightly Nonsense. Our hearts go out. Our prayers are going out to the people who are enduring this, those people who have made it through, and those people and the families that are cleaning up the messes of people who didn't make it through this.
And are grieving their losses. At this point.
Exactly. So we're going to be praying. We thank you for joining us. We'll see you again next time, Nightly Nonsense.